Hi, welcome or welcome back to the channel. My name is Megan Maldonado, and we are going to continue talking about Sir Gowther and the Medieval Masculinity series. In the last video, I asked, can a dangerous man be good? And that was the introductory question to the first half-ish of Sir Gowther, in which we look at a knight who is not just a dangerous man, but he's half demon and is dangerous, yes, and that's putting it mildly. He does a lot of nasty, kind of terrible stuff. I mentioned in the previous video also that there are two manuscripts of this Middle English version of Sir Gowther. One of them is the polite version. It doesn't feature the episodes with, or the episode with the nuns. Go back to that video to recall what happens there. And I think it kind of tones down the violence a little bit, the more polite aristocratic version of the romance. There's the nitty-gritty one that I think British Library has, and that's where you find more of the Quentin Tarantino elements of Sir Gowther. We're going to continue looking at Sir Gowther, and we're going to find that there is continued violence and continued danger, but we're going to see how Gowther figures out atonement or what that looks like for him. He doesn't quite figure it out on his own. He gets help from the Pope, and I happen to be filming this on the day before Ash Wednesday, so penitential theme one way or another. Let's get back into the romance and dive right in. I'll share my screen. Once again, go to Middle English Text Series and look for Sir Gowther, excuse me. Gowther is spelled like this. Not intuitive spelling, alas. And it should be metseditions.org. You can just Google that. Very easy to find. You don't need to pay for any service or have any kind of university affiliation in order to access. Hooray. We left off at about line 240-ish here as I highlight absolutely everything. Okay, so Guther's just told his mother to go shrift herself, to go confess, and to seek penance. Remember, she had lied to her husband, saying, an angel told me we were going to have a child, when in fact she had already been, yeah, you could say she was tricked into conceiving a child, which is a kind of, let's say, SA or grape. Again, I have to be obnoxiously vague about the terminology because I don't want YouTube to take my video down. Um, but understand what I mean when I'm talking about grape in this context. A word that rhymes with grape. Okay. Ugh, it's so cringe having to say that. But anyway, okay. So the mother had lied. She had conceived this son, yes, unwittingly, but she was open to having some kind of child some way, somehow. And so one wonders what the real agency is of the Duchess in that. But now his earthly father, Gunther's earthly father, not the biological dad, because again, that is the devil. Earthly father died. Gunther is the Duke. An old earl came to him and said, hey, I don't think you're a Christian guy. I don't think you're of Christian strain, even, which invites this sense of is Christianity passed down genealogically, according to the romance at least. So he goes to the Duke, who is Gowther. Gowther feels very convicted by this, confronts his mother. Mother tells the truth. He says, go, mom, go confess your sins. But now what is he going to do? He's going to do the same, except what is his sin? His sin of being born evil? How does one repent of that? Let's find out. To save him fro his father, though fiend, he prayed to God and Mary Hind that most is of poste, to bring his soul to thou bliss that he walked to all his upon the road tre. I almost got a little fussy there. So he is praying to God and to Mary, possibly for the first time in his life, first time we've seen. He has been baptized. He was christened Gowther, and that is common in the Middle Ages, even into the early modern period. You got your name in a Christian country when you were baptized. So he's got one of the sacraments going for him, despite the demonic parentage. Okay, let's continue. I will to Rome to the apostil that he may shrift me and assoil, excuse me, kept though me castil frey. So Guther is giving the Earl temporarily for stewardship the castle, the dukedom of Austria, let's remember, and he will to Rome to the apostle, to the Pope. Okay. And he wants to get Schrift, his confession, his penance. It's one of my favorite Middle English words, by the way, if you're keeping track. Okay, the old Earl left him there. Gunther goes toward Rome. He radly ran. It almost sounds like he's running there, but he has his own horse. Um, Wait, actually, let me see. Would he noder horse ne man with him to rein ne read? I'm curious about the note here. Oh, okay. Sorry, I misread that detail. Or I got ahead of myself rather. Gunther's rejection of horse and man underscores both his determination to atone for his transgressions and the solitude that atonement requires. I don't know if I buy that. I mean, sure, it's fine as a reading. I thought Radley ran was was just a funny way of saying that he was going quickly, but no, indeed he ran on foot to Rome from Austria. I think the other effect that the gloss is missing, why I said I didn't really quite enjoy it, is that you're getting another reminder of just how dang strong, superhumanly strong this Guther is. We learned earlier that he cuts a horse in half, possibly just with his own sword, and definitely by himself, which it requires a lot of strength. And now you're getting that he just runs to Austria. It's kind of like Forrest Gump, I guess, just kind of running all over the place forever. Um, but that's where he's going, and that's how he's doing it. Okay. Yes, oh, he's so eager to be penitential, but I think the text is winking and nodding and saying, don't forget that he still has a demonic parentage here. That's what gives him the strength. Svalchen kon he with him tak, he laughed it not for well ne rack, it hung a be his seed. This is the sword mixed of iron and steel that he made himself, and it is going with him. Why is that important? We'll find out in just a little bit. So he goes to the Pope, kneels down, prayed him with mild devotion, mild not as like a degree of intensity, but a humility. With Schrift and absolution, he granted him his bone with an artu and of contre de Vestrike, de Gvastria, etc. There was he got him the fiend and bore him with his hand. He will gladly be me fey, arto christened. This is the Pope's response. Now we love God. Okay, cool. So Pope is hearing this. The Pope seems weirdly unfazed by hearing that Guther is born of a demon and a duchess. Um, I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Maybe this is uncommon, or maybe this is common. Maybe that's more of a political statement, or maybe it's just not something that we really wanted to attend to in this rather short romance. Don't want to make too much of it, but I do think it's a little funny that Pope takes it in stride here. Says, okay, cool. You're born of a demon and a noble lady. Do you have baptism? Did you get that? Yep. Okay, okay. Cool. Um, Now I did hear, he says, Ellers I most travel thither upon the for to where for thou hast holy kirk distrid. Nei holy fader, be the nocht aggraved, I shall they truly swear at the bidding bane to be and hard though penance that thou layst to me, and never Christen dare. So Pope says, okay, half demon, cool, you're baptized, great. I did hear that you were grieving the church. If you recall from the first video, we talked about not just the burning down of the nunnery and what Guther and his men do to the nuns, violate them. There's also a miscellany of clerics that Guther just is beating up or killing, and it's happening all over the town, all over the place, really, not just the town. Um, and Pope heard about it. Did the Pope do anything about it? I guess he's doing something now, but let's leave that aside. Guther says, no, 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 I'm done doing that. Moreover, whatever penance you have me do, I'm gonna do it. Pope says, cool. Lidan di faccion then the fro, du shalt be skreven or ego, an soiled horriblin. Nay, holy father, said Guthur, this bos me nedes with me bear. Me friendes are full thin. And now, for some reason, Maybe if I refresh this, the glosses will line up, but the glosses are not one-to-one here, and I don't want that to confuse you. It's gonna make me restart the freaking thing. Let me just go over to where I was. All right. Actually, I don't think it lined up again. I don't know what it is about this website. Just keep that in mind if you're using the website. The glosses get a little mismatched at times. I'm not sure why that is. Alas, okay. Lidon i fachon, then the fro du shalt beskreven origo and soil oriblin. He's saying, okay, lay down your sword. The fachon, also spelled falchion, is a particular kind of sword. And remember, this is the one that Guther made himself, but this sword type in general, it's not double-edged, as far as I understand. It's got one edge, and it's got, as if you can see me, it's got a curved blade, just curved kind of at the end. What is an example that you can think of? Just Google falchion, but you'd see in cartoons like in Aladdin, the Disney Aladdin, or any others that are similarly supposed to be like vaguely Middle Eastern, when you have one of those swords that's kind of curved and it signals somebody from the East, right? The Orient, as they used to say, and now you probably get fired for. That's the kind of vibe we're going for. Now, I don't think you would never have seen one in Europe, but I have read a scholar who suggests, or maybe it was in the commentary here, I can't recall, that the sword's design does signal something foreign about him, not just the mixed metals, which is more of the argument I make, that the mixed metals signal a mixed heritage from Guther, but that the nature of the sword doesn't look like something that an Austrian man would have. It's something a little foreign, therefore maybe dangerous, threatening, or just odd at least about him. Pope is saying, put down this sword. Nay, Holy Father, says Guther. No, no, I can't do that. I need it with me. My friends are full thin. Full thin. He doesn't have a lot of friends, meaning I need my sword with me. I don't have a lot of people to back me up. I don't know what happened to his boys who violated those nuns, but I guess they're not in his posse now. Where ser du travelis, be north or south, excuse me, in this case. South sometimes means truth, so that's why I'm clarifying. Du et no mate, but that thou ravest of hundusmoth come the body within. Wherever you travel, north or south, you will eat no meat, or no food, really, what it means. No meat, but that that you receive from the mouth of a hound. So he cannot eat anything unless it comes out of a hound's mouth. Not vomit in that sense, but think of it this way. If a dog is chewing on a bone, if the masters are, once they're at the feast or anything that's extra or not a great cut of something, you might give it to the dogs, you might go out and give it to the poor, or both. Whatever the dogs are eating, that's what Guther gets to eat. So he's not even the next step down in terms of the charity levels that come after the feast. He's a step below even that, is what the Pope is prescribing for him. He carries on. Ne no word spake for evil ne good, or the raid token have fro God, that forgiven is the sin. You will not speak a word either for evil or for good. He said, I don't care what it's about. I don't care whether you think it's important. You're not speaking until you received a token from God that you are forgiven. So God's going to tell you when you're allowed to talk and eat again. What is that going to look like? We don't know. Guther accepts the terms. Now, would his penance have been easier if he just put down the sword? It's left implied. We don't know for sure. I do think, though, that's when, yeah, actually, we can probably say pretty confidently, lay down your sword, and then you will be forgiven. You'll be confessed. And then Guther says, no, I'm not going to do that. And so now, instead of just putting on the sword and walking away, Guther has to go through this whole rigmarole of eating whatever dogs have eaten or partially eaten and not talking until he gets the sign from God, whatever that happens to look like. And this is preferable to Guther. It's not the trade I would have made. I'm not gonna lie to you, but then again, I'm not really attached to a sword because I haven't made one myself. Maybe that's the reason. Anyway, he kneeled down before the Pope. Solemnly, he kon him assoir, the such so to say, mate in the room, got he none but of a dog, moth, a bon, and weakly went his way. He went out of that city, and another far country, the testamentis, thus they say, he sat him down under a hill, a greyhound brought him mate until or even each a day. Excuse me. Is this note gonna have something about greyhounds? Good. Okay. I wanted to make a note about this. Now, what's just happened, if you're not following along in the Middle English super well, he kneels down before the Pope and he's essentially agreeing to this. He doesn't eat any food in Rome except a bone that he got from the mouth of a dog. He's not talking. Says the he went out of that city into another far country. Testaments thus they say. Um, Curious, I'm not sure whose testaments it is supposed to emphasize the fact that Guther himself wasn't talking about this. I'm not sure. But he sits under a hill, and then a greyhound brings him meat pretty habitually. Now, this note, I think, is instructive. From Albertus Magnus, Man and the Beasts, excuse me. From Albertus Magnus, greyhounds seldom, if ever, bark. On the contrary, they show disdain for the yelping of small dogs, which bark for the sake of showing their prowess as watchdogs. Nor do they rush headlong to greet any newcomer, since they seem to regard such flurry of activity as beneath their dignity. Moreover, this dog must be fed more milk than whey when it is weaned. There is something noble about the greyhound. Now, it could be its breeding, but breeding, has perhaps the effect of perpetuating the symbolism associated with the greyhound. That is, it's a quiet dog, and Guther, this is a time where he is instructed to be quiet for his penance. And there's also something a little holy about it. It's reflecting the penitential mood of Guther, so maybe in that respect, it's also got a quasi hmm, sanctified vibe to him, the Greyhound, I mean. But then also, it is delivering food, and then it says here, much like a ministering angel to a desert hermit. Now, that comparison is left implicit. We're not told by the text, or given this association by the text, nor do I think we would find greyhounds in the desert in that way, but I don't think we're supposed to take that analogy too literally. If you're curious about dog breeds, you happen to have a greyhound yourself, maybe, just know that there is this understanding that, okay, a greyhound in particular, this noble yet quiet beast, is much like Guther's penitential self. He is noble, he is a duke, he was born of a duchess. He is quiet now, volitionally, for his penance, excuse me. And there is a quiet dignity there to both creatures at this point. Is that to say that the Greyhound then is elevated in our sense? Is Guther made a little more humble because he is like this beast? Sure. I favor the latter reading, but curious if you have different thoughts. Let's keep going. Let's not get caught up to line by line, perhaps. Just know that he finds a castle. There's an emperor there. Guther, Sir Guther up and in con Guan at the door Usher Fontinan a porter at the gate. He's going into the castle. He doesn't find an usher or a porter. There is a steward. But what Guther does is he finds this wealthy household, an emperor's household, and he sits under the table. You know why? Because that's where the dogs are going to be, and that's where he's going to get his food. So he's like, okay, I know this is where I'm going to get my food. Cool. Steward tells the emperor. Emperor says, what is that? Steward tells him, and that they can't get a word out of him. One word of him he might not get. They let him sit and gave him mate, excuse me. And yet, mayhappen there was some chance that it were given him in penance. So the steward makes a wildly correct guess that he's behaving this way not because he is crazy or because he's demonic. That also would have been a good guess, but because, he's probably just doing penance. And the emperor's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're probably right. And everyone just goes along with it. It's fascinating to me because I don't live in a world where we assume that somebody who's sitting down under a table, a vagrant, eating food that comes out of a dog's mouth, we don't assume that person is doing anything penitential, with good reason, probably now today. But it seems, at the very least, in the romance, that's a reasonable assumption. I'm not sure how often you would see that in the period, and in fact, you really wouldn't see big public penance done much at all. We can talk about that a little later. The Empress is seated. A spaniel comes with a bone to Gowther. Gowther, and Gredele on it, he is gnawing on the bone that the spaniel brings. He's not going to take any food from anybody. Emperor and the Empress and the knights and the ladies, they beheld him, and they are surprised, but they carry on. They call him Hob, Hob her fool, Hob their fool. They con him call, to God he him con yell. So they are pretty accepting of this. He's now Hob the Fool. Hob is kind of like the medieval version of Bob, almost literally. Hob is a diminutive of Robert. Bob is a diminutive of Robert. So it's like when you come up with a generic name for somebody, like, oh, there goes like Johnny so and so, or fill in whatever name. Hob in this case is fulfilling that purpose. Now this ilk, this same emperor, had a doctor wheat as flour, was to so dump as hay, she would have spoken and meek not. That maiden was worthily rocked, both fair, courteous, and free. The emperor has a daughter, always a fair maiden in a great romance. She's white as a flower. Remember that whiteness of skin, fairness of skin is a highly coveted beauty trait. Definitely signals nobility because you're not out working the field. So freckles at this time would have been a blemish. And some people still regard it as such, not as much in the Western world, I think. Now people are adding fake freckles onto their faces. But setting that aside, daughter, what is a flower? She was too so dumb as hey. She's the term dumb being mute. She is just as mute as Guther is. We don't know why. Doesn't seem to be penance she's undergoing. She just happens to be mute and incredibly beautiful and the daughter of an emperor. I wonder where this is going. Okay. Till her fara kon he say, my lord well great is they, those sodin, that is a mickle meat, we'll wear upon the day and nicht, and brain the burus frey. This is a messenger who's come, a messenger come upon a day. The sodin is a sultan, so probably not from Europe. Was trying to be funny there, didn't really land. Anyway, so the messenger of a sultan has come, and let's see what he has to say. Say the men what him say, the doctor that is so fair and hein that he may her wed. So, uh, he's going to, the Sultan, war upon you, day and night, burn your bowers, slay your men. But if you, or unless you send your daughter that is so fair, that is so courteous, beautiful, that he may her wed. So I'm going to have a war with you unless you give me your daughter to marry. Listen, she's beautiful, she doesn't talk. There are some men who would kill for that, I think. I'm not landing with my jokes today. The Emperor said, Ye have but one that is dump as any stone, fairer there none be fade, and ye will not be Christ wond, give her to no heathen hond, then wear me bale braid. So, the Emperor, in no uncertain terms, says, listen, I've only got one daughter. She's dumb as any stone, but she is beautiful, and she's my daughter, and I will not, by Christ's wound, give her to no heathen hound, that being the Sultan. So it's not just, well, I've only got the one daughter and I've got to be strategic. Might be a little bit of that too, but also, like, this is my Christian daughter. I'm not giving her to somebody not of the same religion. Yet may God through is mich again to get her speech recht. So he does hope, he prays that God will give her speech one day. So the messenger goes back to the almost said Saracen to the Sultan, probably the Saracen as well, to the Sultan, and repeats the message. Something else I want to note here. The Emperor does the opposite of what Guthr's mom does. Kind of. Guthr's mom was not totally culpable. She doesn't know that she is having sex with a demon. Mm, should she have known? Was it kind of suspicious? Probably. So I think it's still ambiguous in that way. The Emperor, on the other hand, is saying, I'm not going to create a situation in which we are begetting somebody of this mixed Christian and not Christian parentage, basically. Now, I am putting a little more emphasis on progeny here. The emperor is not referring to any children that may come. I do think it's implicit, though, of why, I'm not going to give my Christian daughter to somebody of, pagan beliefs, of heathen beliefs, he called them, even heathen hon. So it's almost inhuman using the hound label there. And he echoes the faith, like, okay, not echoes, but he affirms his faith that God's going to save the daughter. But we are getting, I think, an implicit juxtaposition between Guthr's um, conception, let's say, and now this potential marriage of the Christian woman and the Saracen of the Sultan here. The idea being it's not a good idea to have somebody of Christian and non-Christian parentage. It's not good to have a child that's mixed in that way. This is a developing idea still for me, but that does seem to be an anxiety. Now, I will say, it's not uncommon to find romances in this period, especially in the 15th century, in which anxiety about parentage is a big deal. Why might that be a big deal? Well, in a patriarchal patrilineal society, especially if we're looking at romances geared towards the aristocracy, and many were, of course there's anxiety about is this son here, is this actually the son of the Duke or the son of the king or the son of whoever, fill in the blank male leader. That really matters a ton when you're thinking of who gets the land depends on who is the son of whom, right? So there's lots of romances that play on the anxiety over genealogy. I don't think this is a commentary on globalization or different civilizations coming together and getting mixed. I don't I don't think so. And yet I'm not confident enough to sit in this reading to say that's definitely not on the table here. Might there be some anxiety that has more to do with, I don't even want to say culture. Culture is too weak of a term. The religious mixing, Christianity and anything else is it's a no-no, especially when we're talking about the passing down of lands or the combining of empires, like a political kind of allyship or unity with a pagan nation. When we're talking about a time period in which Christianity is not the private social club that you attend on Sundays, but it is a cultural and even can be, for better or for worse, a political organization mechanism. But and it is, especially in the time of you're looking at Charlemagne, Holy Roman Empire, even beyond the Holy Roman Empire, when you have the papacy spread throughout pretty much all of Europe. This is a big deal to marry your Christian daughter off to a sultan who is not Christian. It's a big deal in a very negative sense, in a way that goes beyond what we might think of as religious or racial prejudice. We're talking about a political consequence, the likes of which we can't understand today in our current world. So, is there an anxiety about, let's say, being mixed race here? I hesitate to say yes, only because that term belies the the social, cultural, political context of the period and religious context of the period as well. Anyway, that's what the Sultan is proposing. The Emperor says, "Go F yourself," and then messenger goes back to the Sultan. Okay, Sultan's not happy about it. Takes his host and he comes near, goes to the Emperor's castle. So Gowther, and I'll probably go a little more quickly through this part. Gowther prays in his heart, remember, because he can't talk, on the rod that balked him dead, sent him armor, shield, and spear, and a horse to help his lord in war. So he prays in his heart, God, please send me armor, a shield, spear, and a horse. I want to help this emperor. And God does it. He finds all of those things, literally all of them, at his chamber door, and all of them are black in color. Excuse me. Gets on the horse, goes out and fights. Only thing I'll add here. Non him knu bought that maiden gent, and after her father he for. Remember, she sees Gowther go off and fight, so she knows, okay, who's this guy in all black with the black horse and everything? She knows it's Gowther, but she also can't talk, right? So that's an important detail. The Emperor has a battle. Sultan, excuse me, a fierce battalion, excuse me, not a battle. Sultan also had that. Gowther comes in. Gowther fights really well. Blood and brains conbrast. Uh, brains, blood bursting, literally. Okay, puts the Sultan to flight. And now the fight's done. His horse, his armor, away we're done. Ne wist where he mich to been. So he disarmed himself, and I think the armor just kind of goes away. Doesn't really seem to be findable. Again, remember they're divinely provided, so makes sense. He sits between two small hunting dogs. Two small ratchets between. Said him. Takes his food. Cool. Now, the maiden finds two greyhounds. Oh, coincidental. And wash their mouths clean with wine, and put a loaf in the tun, and in the toder flesh full god. And so in one puts one mouth of a greyhound, she puts a loaf after cleaning it out. The other mouth of greyhound, excuse me, um, meat. And raft both oat egermo, the doctor of body and bone. So he's able to eat. So she recognizes he'll only take food from the mouths of greyhounds and gives him what I think somebody has called kind of quasi-sacramental. Is it here that I was recalling that? No. With the wine and the bread, I think it's not really Eucharistic in my opinion, but certainly very regal. And with the greyhounds being a noble breed and also quiet and gentle, and she washes it out with wine, and so it's a kind of luxury experience despite still having to eat the food that comes out of a dog's mouth. But she recognizes and she's seemingly rewarding him for his efforts. Sultan comes back. Okay. The messenger, excuse me, comes back. Sir, bring you a letter. My lord is coming. Yesterday you slew his men. Today's coming in the field. He's got thousands more than 10, so more than 10,000 men. He's coming back. All right. Now, God sends Sir Gowther, through his might, a red horse in armor bright. So now, instead of a black horse and armor and weapons and everything, now same stuff, but red. Interesting. Now there's battles and battalions going out to battle. That keeps throwing me off. Fights the Saracens. He laid upon those Saracens black and guard for basnetus into crack. He keyed that he was keen. Proved that he was brave and he was cracking basnetus, the helmets. And now I am curious about this. He laid upon the Saracens black. So the Saracens are black. Um, Not in the sense that we think of people being black today when you say, especially in American English, and I think, British English as well, somebody who is black, you think of somebody who has ancestry from sub-Saharan Africa. It's not what we mean always when we're talking about blackness in Middle English. Even, I'm not even sure if we would refer to somebody as being actually black in that way. It's usually somebody who has a darker skin color. So it could be somebody who has to put it kind of crudely, like brown skin. So it could be somebody who is Middle Eastern, it could be somebody who is, yeah, Northern African maybe. But what's curious to me is that just the day before, I believe it was, Gowther is coming out, or at least in the previous battle, Gowther is coming out all in black as well. Now he's in red, the Saracens are black. So is blackness supposed to convey what a sinful state, maybe, as far as colors go? It's not just related to the Saracens. You don't have to just be a Saracen in order to have blackness associated with you. We see that Gowther carries that as well. At least he did. Now he's red. Slightly brighter color, maybe, in terms of amount of light, I guess. Anyway, let's keep the color theory in the back of our minds. Let's keep going down. Many a hathon he gars to blade, and dingus home to the dead, and here come to help me. Another in black yesterday had way that seared him well in this steed. So the Emperor's noticing that somebody in mysterious armor is coming to help him. His fortune is full stiff of steel. Lock he wars his dintus full well, masters of home never won. Interesting. So his falchion looks like it's like full stiff of steel. Remember earlier in the romance, that Gowther makes his falchion out of iron and steel. Now the Emperor is saying, and of course the Emperor isn't privy to the nature of the sword, so he could just be mistaken, but I think this is important. He says, it looks like that sword is fully made of steel. Now, if I am right that this mixed metal element to the sword is supposed to be evocative of Gowther's mixed parentage, his being half Christian and half demon. Now that his sword is looking like it's full steel, which is the brighter metal, stronger, sturdier metal, if the sword is looking like it's full steel now, I wonder, is that reflective of Gowther's progress in his penance, his shedding of his demonic parentage? That's my sense. Let's keep going. Okay. Just as before, the battle is done, Gowther disarms himself, and the horse and the armor go away. He doesn't know where. Again, they are divinely provided. Okay. Down to the Emperor and his men in the hall. And they fed Hob the Fool. Again, that's Gowther. Emperor thanked God of Heaven. Do, 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 do. Discomfited though Sauron was and slain his men, most of priests, save those that with him fled. So most of his best men, the men of price, think of the pearl of great price, separate phrase, but to be of price means valuable. So most of his valuable men were slain, except for those who fled with him. Is he done? No. He says, notices, okay, there's one guy he was in red. There was the other one in black, so they don't know if it's the same person. Um, they have these people have been hurting us, particularly those two in strange armor. Okay, that's the Sultan's side. Let's get back to the Emperor. Guther in his chamber lay, blah 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 blah. He can't enjoy the partying because he had no thought but of his sin, and how he micht his soul win to the bliss that God come him be. So he can't sing, right, and dance. Well, he could probably dance, but he can't sing around and do whatever because he can't talk. And now he's upset about it. He's just dwelling on his sinfulness, and God hasn't given him the sign that he's forgiven yet. So he's still gonna eat dog food, pretty much. Okay. Do 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 do. A messenger comes to the emperor and says, "Now is war." Okay. Now the sultan is back. Blah blah blah. Count him not. Quoth the emperor. Shall God assemble a stiff in store and meet him if he may. I'm going to gather my men and meet him in battle on the battlefield, basically. Okay, so you know the drill. Guther prays to God and that God would send him armor and a horse and everything just like he has before. Lo and behold, we get all the same stuff. Now they're all milk white. What's the other white thing that we've encountered? Well, we know that the daughter of the emperor is white, fair-skinned. Is that the same as being, I don't know, good if we're thinking of the blackness of Saracens as being indicative of sinfulness? Is whiteness good then? I don't know. And again, are we talking precisely about race? Now, that is a big debate in scholarship today, in medievalist scholarship. The idea that medieval blackness and whiteness help to create a sense of racial superiority or inferiority, morally speaking. So there are arguments for that. Is that what's going on here? It's possible. I do think, though, that the moralizing, that's not quite the right term, the moral associations with something being black or something being white, not really referring to skin color, but to nature in general. This is a common theme in different kinds of literature, and we even see it in scripture. It's not referring to people who are black or white. I don't even think you would encounter that many white people in the Bible. Certainly not enough that this would be the motivation for having whiteness evoke purity or goodness. It's more the difficulty in getting something pure milk white and sustaining it of that color. It shows that other things, um, be it dirt or bacteria, they wouldn't have known about bacteria then. The point is to say, this milk whiteness. So he remember he starts off as black or with black armor and a horse, red, white. There's some argument in scholarship that of these 3 days, the increasing of the shades, getting up to white shows a kind of, or it's evocative of this penitential journey. I think there might be an argument in here somewhere, though I haven't encountered one from another critic, that says the whiteness is also a kind of transformation into Christianity. You know, he's participating now color-wise with the emperor's court. You know, the daughter is this lily white. He is now this, he looks milk white, at least to the eye here. Does that mean that he is now a little more integrated into the emperor's court? Perhaps. Let's keep going. Okay. So the maiden sees yet again. Guther goes to fight. Sultan Bar and sable black, 3 lions ramped with hootelak, that all of silver shone. So again, blackness being associated with the Sultan now, not just the Saracens. And then there are, well, let's keep going. He's well arrayed, let's just say that. So Guther, he goes out to meet him. He's fighting. The Saudin for the Emperor's doctor gar Kriston in heathen to die in slaughter that team him board well ban. So all this is happening because the Sultan wants to marry the Emperor's daughter, and Christian men and heathen men are dying for this reason. Let's keep going. Ah, so Guther is fighting money a dochty horse is death there cocked that he meet over rich and excuse me, that he with his falchion hit they fell to the ground and rose not yet nor look it after knowledge. So everybody said he's hitting with his sword is dying and never gets up again. So is it the sword? Is it him? Probably a mix of both, but it's why he didn't want to give up his sword. Now note, this was the thing he was supposed to give up to be penitential, and yet it's helping him achieve penance, perhaps, because he is fighting on the side of God. He's fighting on the side of Christianity against the Saracens. So I guess, either the Pope knew or God knows and worked through the Pope. Doesn't really get specific in the text, but essentially, if he wasn't going to give up the sword is going to be useful in part of getting him, um, in part of getting his absolution. That's how it seems to be working. If all he hungered, not he did eat, but what he meat through the hundred's get, he did as the Pope con him teach. So if he was hungry, he only ate from the hounds. That's what the Pope told him to do. Okay. Do. Let's keep going. Emperor fought with all his might. Bradley was he talking, and with the Saudin away was led. The Dump Duke guard him lay away, struck of his head and on, rescued his lord, brought him again. Loved be God and heart was full fain. So the emperor almost gets carried away, captured. I don't know why I said that weird. The Duke, that is Gowther, he rescues the Emperor, hooray. And then a Saracen comes with the spear and smites Gowther in the shoulder. Scary stuff. So scary, in fact, the daughter of the Emperor, for sorrow fell out of her tour. For sorrow, she fell out of her tower. So she's watching, eagerly, looking, seeing what's going on, sees her boy that she's probably, starting to get some feelings for, sees him get stabbed in the shoulder with a spear, which at a distance can look very much probably like getting stabbed in the heart, right? So distressing, to say the least. She sees it and is so overcome that she falls out of the tower. Not good. Okay, what happens then? Of all 2 days who stirred no more, then Hodeidah had been. For 2 days she did not stir. She then Hodeidah had been, as if basically she had been dead. It's a weird way of phrasing it if she had actually died. So let's carry on and see what's happened there. Chamber he went, let's see. So this was Guther. Chamber he went, did of his gear this good knight Sir Gowther, then missed he that maiden Shane. Among the Hondas is Mei Taiwan. The Emperor was a true man for his daughter's stand. Okay, so Guther is sad. The Emperor is sad. Emperor says, Pope, come here. You're gonna do the internment. He sends for the Pope. But then, I almost skipped past it. As they're about to intern her, on the third day, mind you, such grace God her sent, that sure raxeld her and ras and spak words that wis was to Sir Gowther ferment. So God sent her such grace that she rises up and speaks words. Hooray to Sir Gowther. Vehement, truly. So she had been mute before. She just died, and on the third day, she rises again. Oh, I wonder where we're getting that from. Okay, she says, My Lord of Heaven greets you well and forgives you your sin each a day. Yeah. So all of it. Grants you your bliss, bids you speak on heartily, eat and drink and make merry. You shall be one of his. She said to her father, This is he that fought for you days 3 in strong battle. Hope had shriven, had confessed him and absolved him as Sir Gowther. He loved God and Mary there. Radley him gone kiss and kissed him. Sir Gowther does this. I think, actually, is Sir Gowther kissing him or is the Pope kissing Sir Gowther? Either way, there's kissing going on. And said, and this is presumably the Pope now art thou God's child that the ver not dote the warlock weird that worried mot he be. You don't need to be doubtful of fear the devil, the warlock, wild. Um, he's over with. Now you're one of God's kids. You are God's child. This demonic parentage is over with. No longer part of your identity. Okay. Then he wed. There he wed that maiden gent. So now Gowther is fully absolved. He's able to eat, drink, and make merry and talk. Excuse me. I can barely talk. He marries the emperor's daughter, so now she can also talk as well, or she was able to talk after going to heaven briefly and coming back. Pope took his leave and went back to Rome. When this menagerie was brought to an end, Sir Gowther went to Austria, where he is from, and gave to the old earl all, made him duke of that country. Why does he make the earl, or yeah, why does he make the earl duke of Austria when he was duke of Austria? Well, because Gowther is now in line to become emperor, so he's already got the promotion lined up for him. He lets his mom marry the old duke. Okay, she's provided for. Gowther makes an abbey and gave the rent for it, so he has it made and pays for it basically in perpetuity. And here li shall, he says, I'm deciding I'm going to be buried here. Excuse me. And put therein Moncus Black to read and sing for God's sake and close it with good wall. Moncus Black does refer to, says here, the Benedictines, refers to the habits that they wear. Though I do wonder also, because if we're going to put so much emphasis on blackness or whiteness or any other color, I don't know, maybe we should keep into account too that the monks being black again refers to their clothes more than their physical person. It's something they put on. Nevertheless, I wonder if that color there associated with the monks, if that does complicate the color morality reading that I was exploring a little bit earlier. I'm not sure. Okay. So even though Gowther is fully forgiven, Pope has totally absolved him, yet was his heart full sour. He was still guilty and grieved about what he did before his penitential journey. He's thinking specifically on the nuns that he and his men violated and then burned alive in their own church. So to pay for that basically, or repay for his crimes, I suppose, he made an abbey and a convent therein, and again pays for it in perpetuity. Then he went home again. His father, the emperor, was dead. So now, wow, Gowther is Lord and Emperor, all Christian knights, and let's see. And the Saracens have dread of it. Do, 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 do. He is now a just guy, and he defends the poor, and it judges the rich men rightly, and Halp Holy Kirk in all his might, he does best to help the Holy Church. He reigned for many a year as emperor of great power. And when he died, the sooth to say was buried at the same abbey that himself gart mak. And he is very coarse and perfect, and with Christian people well beloved, God has done for his sake miracle, for he has him told. There he lies in the shrine of gold that suffered for God's sake. So he was a wise ruler when he died, is buried in the same abbey that he made when he said, I'm going to be buried here. He was a pious person. He was buried. Is he buried with Christian people? I believe so. I'm scanning through this pretty quickly. God did a miracle for him in his life, and we read of this miracle, his transformation from horrible person to now God's child. Whoso searches him, now we're getting into a moral here, the end of the poem. Whoso searches him with heart free of horbel bot may be, for so God has him heat. These words of him there no man wast, for he is inspired with the Holy Ghost, that was though cursed knecht. For he gat us though blind to say, and though dumb to speak per day, and mak us though crooked richt, and give us to though mad whore wit, and money oder miraculous yet, through the grace of God Almighty. Thus Sir Gowther covers his car, that first was rich and silvern bar, and eft was rich again, and gaten with a filtered fiend. Grace he had to make that end, that God was of him fain. This is written in parchment, a story both good and fain, out of a law of Breton. Jesu Christ, God's Son, give us meet with him to one, that Lord that is most of men. Amen. And scene. Okay. Who searches him with heart free, of horbal bot maybe, for so God has him hecht. I'm curious about this note. 735. This line appears in the upper right margin rather than the appropriate place in the tangent. Interesting. Okay. I'll get to this other note in a second. So, anyway, their suffering of horbal bot maybe, horbal bot maybe, excuse me, search for God, the heart free, so willing, basically heart. God may help your suffering. God has helped, the cursed knight. He has helped the blind to see and the dumb to speak, makes the crooked right. Excuse me. So it's recapitulating not just the miracle that we saw, but indeed recounting miracles from scripture too, or alluding to them. The dumb to speak is not, that was also from this, but the blind to see is something that we do see in the Bible. So the God of miracles can help you surely too, if he can do all these great things. He can even make somebody who is begotten of a fiend, he can give him grace. So this is a story both good and fine. Arvela of Breton, Breton lay. And then a prayer. Jesus Christ, God his Son, give us might with him to one, that Lord is most of main, omnipotent might, I believe, is what that, yeah. So prayer, thanks be to God. Gowther is cured of his evilness, and you can go to God with your problems too, because surely if he can take care of all these different things and do all these miracles, he can do these things for you as well. To cap off our discussion of Gowther, my original question, can a dangerous man be good? Now, I haven't intended actually to have a through line between this romance and the previous one, where we looked at Ferumbras in The Sultan of Babylon. However, what I do notice is that, yes, this I don't know if we'd call it a conversion, but certainly Gowther's life before and after his penitential journey, that's what I've called it, that is a little more dramatic than, definitely a lot more dramatic than what we see from Ferenbras. Ferenbras in Sultan of Babylon, he's kind of the same guy, has the same kind of virtue before and after his conversion. Guther here, he acts very differently before and after he undergoes this penitential journey and this whole trial. And yet, he is no less of a dangerous man, I think. In fact, he earns his penance. Finally, yes, he sustains the trials of, let's say, asceticism. He only eats what dogs are chewing on in their mouths. Literally, he doesn't talk. So he abstains from some things. But his penance is ultimately won by something that the Pope never mentioned. And in fact, it seemed like the Pope was almost discouraging, which was the use of his sword. Guther uses the sword to defend Christianity, to defeat the Saracens, the Sultan. That is the thing that gets his, God's approval, it restores his speech and everything else. And so I think this romance is not understanding penance to be a radical transformation into, what should we call it? Passivity. Penance is not just what will you abstain from and avoid. Penance here asks, what will you do? The hero, or masculine hero here, saying that because he's not just because he's a man, but also because he's demonstrating these classically masculine, we could say type or just qualities of strength in battle, leadership, initiative, maybe even. Masculinity here is not, I will give up being violent. I'm not making any pronouncements on how you should behave in real life. I'm just looking at the romance, right? It's not violence is never the answer. It's not I'm the Pope now and I sit and I avoid the battlefield. Pope, that's the Pope's role. What is Guther's role as the masculine man who is now becoming a full God's son, a full Christian here? What is his role? His role is not I'm a pacifist now. His role is not I was killing people before, so now I got to give all that up. It's the right orienting of Guther's violent capacity and physical, raw physical strength, which we see exemplified in different ways. Rightly orienting it to defend Christendom, not just Christianity as an abstract concept or even as, a religion, which is not abstract by any means, especially not in the period. But even this is not just, again, I want us to get out of this mindset as modern or postmodern people. You can't think of Christianity in this context as being a set of internalized beliefs that are more metaphysical than material. Christendom is not just his sense of guilt and now confession. Christendom is a whole social organizing political mechanism that he is now participating in and defending. Before he wasn't really doing that. Yeah, he was Duke of Austria. That's a Christian nation, technically, but he's attacking Christendom because he's killing and offending all these different members of the clerical class while he's going about being evil, not knowing who his parentage is. He wakes up to the fact, through the help of this old earl, he wakes up to the fact that he is of demonic parentage and then says, okay, I repent, I get my penance, I get absolved, and then it works out. It's not a journey into becoming less dangerous. It's a journey into finding the right use for his strength. The end of the romance reminds us that he is a defender of the poor. He judges the rich justly. He rules wisely, and he apparently lives for a long time and then dies and is buried among other Christians. So his Christianity is his defining quality. It's not his violence. Yet, his capacity for violence, nonetheless, is the thing that earns him his penance, the thing that leads to his full absolution, and also is the thing that gets him the marriage to the emperor's daughter and gets him into that family, helps him to become emperor. So can a good man be dangerous? Well, Sir Gowther would tell us, the romance, I mean, Sir Gowther would tell us that yes, a good man can be dangerous, but it's not this wild, haphazard danger that Gowther was exemplifying before. That, as the old Earl tells him, and therefore us, is unchristian. That's the thing that makes the old Earl suspect, I don't think you're of Christian strain, because you're not just violent, you're this haphazard, dangerous, um, chaotic violence that's terrorizing Christian people, the Christians in your land, especially the members of the clerical class, which is a huge kind of a blasphemy, right? So it's not that being dangerous is bad. It's the selfish, indulgent, chaotic, haphazard use of violence against Christendom that is bad. The focused, restricted to the military context kind of violence that Gowther demonstrates towards the end of the romance, that's okay, according to the text at least. That's the thing that is fine for him to do. So, what do we take away from this? I think this example of masculinity, medieval masculinity, shows us that it's not a man's capacity for violence that is itself sinful. It's the motivation behind the violence and the object of it and the context. And is it God ordained? Gowther's given all the materials to go fight in the war by God. That's how we can know and be assured that this violence is okay for him to be enacting. Yes, his own sword is made by him, but everything else is provided for by God directly, and then disappears once it's done. I think the disappearance of those materials is important too. He's not given these things to continue doing forever. It's like God is saying there's a time and a place for your violence and your capacity for it. Here, it's happening now. Okay, you're done. You're done now. I'll let you know when it's time again. So, yes, a dangerous man can be good, according to this text. But it really depends on how that capacity for danger, violence is used, how, when, where, and why. And always, again, according to the romance, it's in service of Christendom. That is what I think the romance is saying. I'm not making a prescription for how that could or should look in real life, but I think it's interesting to explore how different kinds of Christian men, be it the Pope or a knight on the field of battle, they're both men, they're both Christians, but their capacity for danger and violence looks very different. And I think that's something we also have to remember today is that we are not living, in the state of constant, like physical martial battle here. And so what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to wash my hands of any potential accusations that I've endorsed some kind of violence. The romance is saying, I think, or showing that there is a place for it, a time and a place, but it's restricted and it's always under God's ordinance and approval. That's my reading of Sir Gowther in the Medieval Masculinity series. Thank you for watching and listening, and please, any questions, comments, or new ideas, add them in the comments below. Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.